Welcome to a new edition of Harness Central. I'm Harold Howe, and I'm here with Greg Peck today, who's a trainer turned breeder now. And Greg, we're going to just start off, and we'll get into this, but Muscle Hill, you were the guy who made him, raced him, and whatnot. And unless anyone's not watching the game, he's a game changer. He's the new Valley Victory. He's changed the breed. He did have his share of skeptics, like every stallion that ever went to stud. And unless you're not looking at the numbers, you can't disagree. But I'm just curious, I mean, you're obviously biased, but how much confidence did you have that he be this game-changing kind of stallion when he went to stud?
Well, first of all, I think you know me well enough. I'm not biased at all. That's why I never had a whole lot of horses, because I had to look. It's a statistically almost impossible business. So you have to be very objective and unbiased. Muscle Hill, no, I knew he could not miss. Harold, there was never a horse in history. I've said this at thoroughbred conventions. Name one that won 20 times in a row by an average of 4 lengths and was never strongly urged or even asked. He had the gait like no other. And people thought, well, the pedigree. People don't know this. He is maternally inbred on the dam side, back to Yankee Duchess, the same as Muscle Hill, Muscles Yankee, Yankee Glide, and Winsong's Legacy. All very good sires.
Here is a champion. Here is one of the greatest ever. Muscle Hill in the Kentucky Futurity.
If you look at his production, you have to be impressed. But the thing that I think about when I look at it is that, number one, the skeptics, I mean, they're gone now. I mean, everybody wants a Muscle Hill. Question is whether they can afford it. But the subsequent crops we're going to see are out of the extraordinary mares, and it stands to reason the results are going to be that much better. The yearlings are going to be that much pricier, and so forth. Am I missing something on that?
No, you're not at all. And the books have gotten appreciably better year after year after year. If you look back at the first crop, I teased Steve Stewart about this. The sale topper was out of a 20-year-old mare, and you would think that the opening night at the Lexington sale, there would be a dozen you got to have. There were not. The breeders did not buy in shares early. Look at Hanover. I tried to sell Hanover a share in the day for $50,000. They wouldn't buy it, and they just set a record 7 years later, 8 years later, at $175,000. So, I think what people have to get in mind is that stallions are not an accident like people seem to think. They think they can come from anywhere. I don't agree with that. Muscle Hill had every tool in the arsenal that you could possibly have. And the big thing he had was manners. So it's going to be interesting, but I have so much confidence in Merchandiser because he's the best bred Muscle Hill there is, period, bar none.
So bringing us to Merchandiser, you moved from trainer to shareholder in Muscle Hill to now getting into the breeding game yourself with Merchandiser here in Ontario. I guess what brought you to this stage?
Well, a couple of things. Christy Marcos, my significant other, and does every other thing that I don't do, had experience in quarter horse stallions. And then you also have Bob Burgess, who was instrumental and really brought balanced image to Canada, who owns a piece of Merchandiser. So I'd walk into the paddock and people would ask me, well, why not a son of Muscle Hill? And I would say, well, I don't have one. Then when I saw Marion Marauder was not coming, I knew E.L. Titan was going back, and I come up with Merchandiser. And Merchandiser had tremendous speed. He won a couple of times. He went turns of speed that only his father could do. I can tell you, I've trained a lot of good trotters. They didn't have the high turn of speed that Merchandiser had. So that's kind of how it happened, really.
He was a $100,000 yearling.
And by the way, and that's an insult. I've talked about that. I tease people. Why he was $100,000, I don't know. He should have been whatever the sale would top. When I talked to Art Zubrod at Brittany Farms, who's going to breed a mare to him, by the way, he said he's really beautiful. And he is. Nobody seems, how could, and that was Brittany's creme de la creme family. Remember, when George bought mares from Bill Sheehan, the creme de la creme mare was Keystone Profile. Here was the last daughter, first foal, only sold for $100,000, gorgeous individual. Again, they say I guess you never know what happens at a sale, but he should have just topped whatever Muscle Hill could do.
In my time in the game, I've seen a lot of things change, and one of them I think is not for the better, and that is the failure of breeders to come and look at these stallions before they make a selection. And that's probably going to be the case with Merchandiser. People will book to him or not to book to him without actually coming to see him. How would you describe him if someone's on the telephone with you saying, what's he look like?
Well, first of all, actually breeders have come, and I'm very proud to say the first investor in him was Harry Rutherford, who I tease him. He's the boutique breeder, and he would be the one-time Bill Sheehan, and now the late Bill Weaver of Canada. Harry has bred, champion after champion after, came to look at the horse, bought a share right away. What does that tell you? What I would like to see is, yes, people come and look at him, because you know what, I've said this before. I have a son who became a U.S. Army Ranger, which is really quite an accomplishment. It is the elite of the U.S. Army, and I say, Merchandiser, if you stood him beside his father, at this age, at 3 years old, it would be like my son Sean standing beside me. He's chiseled, he's better looking, taller, smarter, of course. Yeah, the whole 9 yards. And Merchandiser is really that. I mean, see, Harold, put it this way. I'm convinced. Maternal breeding family matters. If you look at the thoroughbred business, here's a for instance. The great sires now that are sought after, Warfront, for instance, great pedigree, okay credentials on the track. If you look at a couple of other sires, I see one the other day sold for $1.7 million by a relatively unheard of horse, Congrats, but Congrats is an AP Indy out of a Mr. Prospector mare. So pedigree is where it's at. The other stuff, as I said earlier, the game's improbable enough, so you can only plan based on pedigree. And in this case, you have Muscle Hill, you have his best bred son, and he's at an affordable rate in Canada. I said to you earlier before we came on the television here, look at California Chrome. World famous. Why is his stud fee only $40,000? Because he doesn't have a pedigree. But in our business, we seem to think that on-track performance is where it's at. Yes, to some extent. But if you look at great sires, take like Arts Place, okay? He was a great horse, but not dominant until he got 4, but he had the outstanding pedigree. He really, really did. If you look at Valley Victory came along with a breeder. There's something about that with Bill Weaver. But remember, he didn't even make the Hamiltonian, so there were skeptics when he started. Yankee Glide started. He stood at $4,000 because he didn't come back and didn't make the Hamiltonian. So, to me, I can't say it enough, Merchandiser is the best looking, best bred, very fast, Muscle Hill. If he was in the thoroughbred business, they would be after him more than Southwind Frank or bar hopping because of the pedigree. It's hard to believe, but they would.
And you've put him at a price point here in Ontario that you can't go much less than this.
Well, I want it to be affordable, and between Christy and Bob and I, that's what we came up with. I speak to people all the time like Earl Lennox who have helped me out, who know a lot about stallions. That has helped me. And I do believe in this. And I say this with humility. Some guys know about what a stallion should be. I've said this before. If you look at Stanley Dancer, and I'm not saying I want to compare to him, look at the great stallions that he came up with. Look at recently, my friend Mitchell Skolnick came up with Always a Virgin, and now Always Be Mickey, who'll probably be great too. He's only ever tried a couple in the day. He talk about balanced image, because I know they love him in Canada. Mitchell stood, what was his name, for 1 year, Trade Balance, and he ignited the whole chocolatier thing. But when Bill Weaver bred that mare, he thought she was a terrible mare. And Mitchell stood that Trade Balance for 1 year, and look what happened. So I'm convinced that that's what's going to happen. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't believe in it. Those who know me, I don't do anything I don't believe in, and I believe in Merchandiser very much.
Okay. Well, good luck in the breeding season. We're just nicely getting underway. First day of spring, so good luck in the days ahead.
Thank you, Harold, very much.
Harold Howe, with Greg Peck, giving you the harness racing edge.